Hello, and welcome back to online English class. Hope you guys are doing well. Today we're going to be using the screen record function to talk through some information that should be helpful for you in preparation for your Unit 5 test. Okay, so to remind you, there are two primary elements of your upcoming test. There are the analytical short responses that are going to require you to show your knowledge of the four key texts that we've studied from the modern era, including Andrew Carnegie's The Gospel of Wealth, Jane Addams' The Subtle Problem of Charity, Ellison Durant Smith's Shut the Door, and Robert H. Clancy's The Un-American Bill. Um, so, um, your primary means of preparing for that section of your test is ensuring that you can write an effective analytical paragraph. All right, so you need to be able to explain how the information in the arguments relate to the audience and develop the writer's purpose within their rhetorical context. You need to be able to develop paragraphs that include claims. All right, so an analytical claim, unlike say an argumentative claim, is about what is happening in the text and how rhetoric, all right, specifically rhetoric that has to do with logical structures, is helping develop the meaning or claim or purpose being developed in that portion of the text. Okay, so if I ask you to analyze Carnegie's use of evidence to support his claim in paragraphs 2 through 5 of Gospel of Wealth, you would in your paragraph's initial claim identify what his central claim is, like what principle, what assertion is he building toward in paragraphs 2 through 5? What is he trying to establish in those paragraphs, okay, which is a reading comprehension test? And then what kind of evidence is he using to support that claim, right? How is he using evidence to support that assertion, okay, in a way that is persuasive within his rhetorical context to his audience. Okay, so you need paragraphs to include claims. Evidence obviously is going to be references to the text. Your evidence in an analysis, in an analytical argument, is textual in nature. Okay, so you're looking at how the text actually bears out and supports the assertions that you've made in your claim, which is basically interpretive assertions. He is saying this, he's building to this claim, and he's using this kind of evidence to support that claim, right? Obviously, to defend or support that assertion, you need some inductive evidence, right? And that inductive evidence in analysis is textual evidence, all right? You also just need to be able to develop a line of reasoning, okay, that supports your central analytical assertion, okay, and then comment on the evidence, the textual evidence that you offer in that paragraph. Okay, so again, same principles as argumentation. It's just an analytical argument, an interpretive argument. Okay, these last three have to do with just your clarity of writing sentences that convey clear ideas and arguments, and using conventions of grammar and mechanics to communicate clearly and effectively. Okay, one really important thing that I would point out is your ability to introduce quotations. Okay, so in your writing, you want to make sure that you are contextualizing your quotations as you are introducing them. So you might say, like, in the third paragraph, Carnegie says, quote, or Carnegie writes in his description of the, quote, laws of competition that the benefits outweigh the cost, or right. So make sure that you're contextualizing your quotations. That's an important skill that helps add coherency and fluency to your analysis. All right. So your analytical writing needs to be reasonable and cogent, and obviously so does your argumentative writing. Okay. So the argumentative portion of your essay or your test, I'm sorry, is going to require you to synthesize your knowledge of all of this stuff, which just means to bring it together and to actually use it or to do it, all right, into a well-developed essay that offers your informed opinion about an American issue. All right, so the prompt is going to be from a past AP exam and it'll be about something, maybe something that we talked about directly in class, like economic inequality, and approaching that in a way that is effective. It might be about immigration and the nature of the American identity as taken up in Robert H. Clancy and Ellison Durant Smith. It might be something we talked about directly in class. It might be an issue we haven't talked about it in class at all. It just depends on what prompt I settle on this year. I change it every year, kind of experiment with different kinds of claims. But you can be sure that the prompt will mirror the kind of prompt that you would get from on an AP exam, and also importantly, it will be something that you can develop a reasonable and contentious opinion about. All right. So on your argumentative essay, you need to have a thesis that requires proof that answers the prompt. You need to have an introduction and a conclusion that is useful for establishing the rhetorical situation and leading to your thesis. That's what a useful introduction does, and a useful conclusion, all right, wraps up or finishes the line of reasoning or reiterates the line of reasoning established throughout the course of your essay, okay? So please, in this composition class, sometimes you guys get in bad habits from your writing in other classes that are not as emphatically devoted to composition. In this composition class, right, I am actually evaluating the sophistication and quality of your introductions and conclusions. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're writing a well thought out introduction that actually leads to your thesis statement. That's not optional. All right, that's not decorative. Okay, that's just a part of good writing. You might explore a foundational premise on which your reasoning is going to be based in your introduction. Okay, so it's not decorative. It's something that should help establish and affirm the sort of basis of the conversation that you're having. Okay, your paragraphs need to include claims and evidence supporting the claims. All right, so whatever your thesis statement is, that's obviously going to be your central claim that answers the prompt. Now, obviously, you're going to need some criteria or some arguments that help support your central claim, that help defend the validity of this assertion. All right. And those sub-claims, all right, that support the validity of your central claim need to be discussed in paragraphs. The use of the paragraph in the argumentative essay, especially the short one, it's a unit of thought that establishes a sort of sub-argument or a sub-claim that supports the central claim. All right, so you want to make sure that each one of your paragraphs, you need paragraph breaks. Okay, you will not get above a D if you write me one big old chunk of information. You need paragraph breaks with clear indentations, okay, clear transitions that feature claims, all right, a claim that supports this assertion and evidence that supports that claim, all right? Your line of reasoning that ties together these claims, this evidence, and your commentary to this central claim, all right, is a really important skill and portion evaluated in the rubric, okay? You need transitions that guide me through the argument okay? So because of this, now we can look at this, or reason number one that affirms this central claim is this, reason number two is this, or in conjunction with this information, we can therefore draw this conclusion. Okay, I'm not going to give you a list of transitions. I just need to tell you, generally speaking, that depending on the situation, depending on the paragraph, depending on the thought, you need to have transitional elements that move you through your line of reasoning. Okay. The rest of these are sort of compositional kinds of concerns. Obviously, you need to make sure that you use appropriate methods to develop and advance an argument. That just means like using paragraph breaks, using transitions, okay, using comparison, using contrast, using definition arguments, making sure that all of your terms are clear. Using for examples or scenarios, all of these things are things that can help develop your logic, provide evidence for your claims, and defend your central assertion, your thesis statement. Okay. The rest of these things are stylistic. You clearly always need to write coherently in the AP course. Okay, so let's look a little more closely at some example prompts and one particular example essay and evaluate it according to the rubric that is going to be used to evaluate your argumentative essay as a whole. All right, so if we go to the AP English Language and Composition free response scoring question or free response question scoring rubrics, which if you just Google that, it'll take you straight to this page. We scroll down through the synthetic essay rubric and then through the rhetorical analysis essay rubric all the way down to the open argumentative essay rubric, okay? And your first point is going to be about thesis statement, okay? So of the 6 points available on the essay, one of those points evaluates or is awarded to you if you respond to the prompt with a thesis that presents a defensible position, okay? Depending on the prompt, obviously your thesis is going to change. Sometimes the prompts are claims of value. Sometimes they're claims of fact, all right? So let's look at example one that we spent some time with earlier this unit, all right? So if you Google AP English Language and Composition 2016 free response questions, it'll take you straight to this page. In 1891, Oscar Wilde said, all right, and we've already talked about this at length, disobedience is man's original virtue. Disobedience leads to progress, okay? The prompt then says, Wilde claims that disobedience is a valuable human trait and that it promotes social progress. Write an essay that argues your position on the extent to which Wilde's claims are valid. All right, so this is a kind of DRQ, a defense, refute, or qualify kind of essay. The extent to which he is right implies that you can either sort of say yes, Wilde is completely correct, or Wilde is correct to a certain extent, or Wilde is not correct in saying that disobedience is a valuable human trait or is a, like he says, man's original virtue. They sort of soften that definition there. Which is somewhat annoying, but that's okay. And it promotes social progress. So let's look at an example student essay and see if this student has earned 1 point for their response. Okay, the introduction. Newton's first law states that an object at rest will stay in rest, while an object in motion will stay in motion unless acted upon by a force. Okay, sweet knowledge of physics. The last part of that is crucial, semicolon. Only by applying a force will the motion of an object change. In a similar vein, it is through disobedience and rebellion that social progress can be made. All right, so has this student addressed this issue, right? Is it true or is the student arguing their position on the extent to which Wilde's claims are valid? Yes, all right, the student is asserting that it is true that social progress is made through disobedience. Now, I would just sort of say, if I were the student's teacher, I would invite them to be a little more nuanced and to perhaps think through the extent to which that is true a little more carefully, because this student is just blanketly saying, yes, that's how social progress can be made. That's how social progress is made. It makes no distinction between the fact that disobedience and rebellion can also lead to some serious problems and issues, and so drawing a distinction between good forms of disobedience and bad forms of disobedience is completely ignored here. All right. So again, is the thesis sophisticated? No. Does the thesis answer the prompt? Yes. All right. Well, now let's look at the next section of the rubric, which is sort of aimed at the body of your essay. Okay. So this is out of 4 points. So you're evaluated on a score from 0 to 4. All right. 0 simply means that you do not offer any kind of relevant evidence or commentary. All right. You're just sort of restating the thesis. You're not offering anything of value here. Okay. 1 point is you provide general evidence Okay, and the commentary doesn't explain the evidence relationship to the thesis. It doesn't comment on it. It doesn't unpack how the evidence supports the thesis. It just sort of says, here's some evidence. See it? Nice. Great. Okay. For 2 points, okay, you provide some specific evidence and some relevant evidence, okay, and your commentary explains some of the evidence, right? But no clear line of reasoning is established, or the line of reasoning is faulty, okay? So there's some logical fallacies there. So this is like a developing score. It's like you're almost there. You're doing a decent job. 3 means you provide specific evidence to support all claims in a line of reasoning. And your commentary explains how some of it supports your thesis. Okay, so this would be like a DEV kind of argument, like a development kind of argument. You did it. Okay, you've got evidence to support your line of reasoning, but it is not well explained. And then 4 would mean that you have effective evidence and effective commentary. All right, so let's look at this dude or this dudette's evidence here. Okay, so the first example of American, or the earliest example of American disobedience, is the Stamp Act Congress. All right, so the students obviously probably got done taking like a U.S. history class or something, because they rely on a lot of historical information here, which is reasonable and right on topic and right on prompt. Okay, so the student then goes on to comment on how the Stamp Act Congress led to social progress as an act of disobedience. Okay, so I'm not going to read through all of the students' writing. It's relatively not. It's relatively uninteresting. You could read through it if you wanted to, but all of you are more than capable of writing at this level. All right, it's just basically explaining the Stamp Act Congress. But okay, is this a well-selected piece of evidence? Is it a reasonable piece of evidence? Did the Stamp Act Congress lead to social progress? Yes. Was it a example of disobedience? Yes. So is this evidence relevant? Yes. Is the student commenting on and explaining the details of this evidence? Yes. So do we have effective evidence and effective commentary? Yes. All right. Does the student stop there? No. Okay. We get a further example down American history. Okay. I'm not sure if that's how time works, that you go down it, but that's okay. Further along in America's history, there was a fight for civil rights. Okay. So again, very familiar, very kind of, mainstream, clear and obvious forms of civil disobedience that are naturally occurring to the student. Not incredibly sophisticated or nuanced, but is it on topic? Yes. All right. Does it support the line of reasoning that disobedience can lead to social progress? Yes. Okay. And then the final body paragraph just offers more examples, more recent examples. Okay, Yellow Umbrella Rebellion in Hong Kong, so sort of a move for increased democracy in Chinese governing structures. Black Lives Matter campaign, just examples of civic disobedience or civil disobedience and protest that is attempting to increase individuals' access to representation. And to increase the democratic nature of societies. Okay, so regardless of whether or not you believe in the politics of some of these things, has the student offered a reasonable argument illustrating examples of acts of civic disobedience that led to social progress? Yes. All right. So is this a coherent, cogent line of reasoning? Yes. So this student actually got in between a 3 and a 4. I might give him a 3 for some of his commentary if we read back through it. But I'm pretty sure that he was awarded 4 out of 4 points for an effective piece of commentary. So at this point, for an effective body of his essay. Okay, so in other words, at this point, this essay has 5 out of 6 points earned. Now, the last one is Craigie Breach's favorite, right? The highbrow point. Is it demonstrating sophistication of thought? Is it illustrating a nuanced argument? Is it articulating the implications or limitations of an argument? Here's where the student sort of falters. No, there is very little nuance in the student's approach to disobedience, because instead of exploring the very obvious ways in which you could list just as many examples of disobedience and rebellion that did not lead to social progress and that rather led to lots of suffering and increased tyranny. Okay? So instead of exploring that nuance, instead of exploring that limitation to the argument, and writing those limitations and writing that nuance to a more sophisticated conclusion, right? The student just sticks with a very simple approach, but the simple approach works in this rhetorical situation as a draft because it's more or less cogent and there is relevant evidence provided, okay? So, likewise, you, as you are writing your exam, you need to, when you get your prompt, figure out what it looks like to answer that prompt and what kinds of relevant evidence need to be explored in order to answer that particular kind of prompt. Now, not every essay is going to be an essay that sort of deals with a claim of fact like this, in which you can just rely on, pointing to a bunch of different historical information saying, hey, look, it led to social progress. That's not how all these prompts are. Some of them are like moral reasoning, all right, where you'll have to reason through the morality of a certain issue. Okay, so let me show you a couple different examples of some different kinds of prompts before we shut this down and before I sign off. Okay, so the 1999 prompt, okay, it starts with a quote from my all-time favorite play, the play that gave me great success and fame and acclaim on YouTube, Antigone. All right, the AP language test writers provided a quotation, okay, and it's a moral observation. Think, says Haman to his father Creon, all men make mistakes. Oh, I'm sorry, this is not Haman, this is Tiresias, although Haman says something very, very similar. Okay, well, moving on. Need to reread the play, obviously. I'm a failure. Think, all men make mistakes, but a good man yields when he knows his course is wrong and repairs the evil. The only crime is pride. All right, so the central assertion here is that pride is a crime. Pride is the original sin. It is the essential crime, pride. Okay, so the question here that take some time to think about the implications of the quotation. Well, the implications of the quotation is that crime is the essential, or sorry, pride is the essential crime. It is the essential human failure, right? Hubris, pride. And then they want you to write a carefully reasoned essay that explores the validity of the assertion. Like, is it true that pride is the essential crime? Okay. And then you're using examples from your reading, your observations, or experience to develop your position, to illustrate and evidence your position. All right. So that's kind of an example of moral reasoning. Okay, it's a claim of fact, but it's asking you to meditate on whether or not pride is the sort of essential vice of humanity. Okay. And you could just in your body paragraphs explore that the vice of pride and the way that pride might be at the root of a great deal of many human vices and evils, right? All right, let's look at another example. Okay, so from the 2006 exam. All right. From talk radio to television shows, from popular magazines to weblogs, ordinary citizens, political figures, and entertainers express their opinions on a wide range of topics. Are these opinions worthwhile? Does the expression of such opinions foster democratic values? All right. If we were to make this a little more updated, we would talk about the extent to which regular citizens, ordinary citizens, are capable of publishing their political opinions on social media or the internet. Okay, so is that does this form of expression foster democratic values? Okay, is this a good thing for a democracy? Well, you would need to explore and establish mentally what democratic values are. All right, and then you would need to write an essay in which you take a position on the value. All right, so there's a claim of value of such public statements of opinion. All right, supporting your view with appropriate evidence. Okay, so is it a good thing for a democracy for citizens to have ready access to a platform for them to constantly be able to publish their political opinions? Does that help democratic values, or does it harm democratic values? What are the pros? What are the cons? Right? You could sort of qualify that. You could say that would be a nice, sophisticated, nuanced approach. To say it's good in these ways, it's bad in these ways. All right. So once again, that's a value based kind of assertion, and you would rely on evidence from your appropriate evidence. They say, right? You could rely on evidence from your own experiences, your own reasoning, things of that nature. Okay, 2006b says in many national elections, only a fraction of eligible voters actually cast ballots. For local elections, the voter turnout is even smaller. To prevent this state of affairs, some countries, such as Australia, make voting compulsory for all adults. In a well-written essay that draws upon your reading experiences or observations for support, take a position on the issue of compulsory voting. That means you have to vote. Okay, the government requiring you by law to participate in the voting process. So, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? This again, this is an issue of a claim of value. Is that a good thing? Right? Is that a bad thing? Is that something that promotes social flourishing? Is it something that inhibits an individual's rights? Okay, so a lot of different kinds of questions that we can ask. All of them need to be answered in their own unique way, but the key is making sure that you establish a central claim that answers the prompt and then offers criteria or supporting arguments that are commented on with appropriate evidence in your body paragraphs so that you can get all of your points on your rubric. All right, have a great day. I'm signing off. I will get you those prompts tomorrow, and you can begin the process of working on those. Remember, there's no time limit. You can work as long as you want on them. All right.